At this stage in the application development, we've completed two parts of the four fundamental operations that are carried out in an application that has data to work with. We have this usual expression called CRUD, create, read, update and delete. And so far we've got read, because we can read data from the storage, which is admittedly in a file at the moment. And we can update it when we choose this one, change the data and click the checkmark button here. It saves the data back into the object that we were dealing with. So we've got R and U. So the next aspect that we should deal with is C, create. Now there are options for launching the create from the interface, and I think it should happen from the home page. And when we have this home page, we could put a button on the navbar in the same way as we've done with this. But I want to show you a different type of button which really demonstrates the responsive or design that has been put in place by Ionic. And what we'll do is we will put a button on here and then give it code in the next video to do the save that we want. The sort of button I want us to use on this particular interface is called a floating action button. And what it is part of the Google's material design specification, which is specifically produced for mobile and different types of interface design. So if we go to the UI components, now there are buttons, and you've been there before and we've looked at all the different types of buttons there, but we've got fabs. Now fabs are really good, and these are examples of fabs. They are circles which have an icon in them to indicate their purpose, and they can be positioned in a position on the screen, in a place in the screen. And when you position them, that place is relative to the rest of the screen, and that will become clear once I show you what that means. Now the one we want to use, which you can barely see here, is a grey button there, which is very much similar to the background in which it sits, is called Ion Fab Right Bottom. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy the code for Ion Fab Right Bottom here. Copy it. Go back to my code. So we can see what's going on. And in home.html, after we've got our list, but before the end of the page, I'm just going to make a bit of space so we can see what's going on. I'm going to paste that button in. Now obviously I have to close this tag because we didn't copy all of the code in from the site. Now this Ion Fab bottom right button is going to place a button in this part of the screen, and it will scroll as the screen is moved. So what I want to do is I'm going to change its name to add, and I'm going to change its color to primary. There are color specifications which are standard and interpreted by browsers in a uniform way, although you get shading differences between different browser types. That primary is supposed to be one of the ones which is kind of like a web safe color and should be really fairly accurate in all the browsers in which it's used. So if I now create a save, and there is that add button, and the great beauty of it is that it's sitting on the bottom right on this particular size of interface. But as you know, the sizes of interfaces vary hugely, and when this interface, say it was very much longer and thinner, the button would stick in its position and therefore be available to the user in exactly the same spot, regardless of which interface they're using. If they're using a tablet, it's going to be over here. If they're in a phone, it's going to be here, and so forth. So it's a very familiar position, and when users know where things should be, they were going to be much better at using them. So what we'll do next is I will add a click event for this button so that we can then respond to it and make it do stuff. So I have added the code for our click event to be called. The click event is that one, and when it is called, it will look for a function called onAddClick. Now this is in home.html, so therefore the method should be in home.ts. Now this method will not do its data work here, because the data work should always sit in the service which is managing our data across the whole application. Now you might have several data services managing data from different sources, but at the moment our application, because it's very simple, uses the one which is called inquiry service and no other. So I will put our code for our click event just here, and then I will talk it through. So as usual, we've got a framework, a stub for this for a method, and I will just put literally just something to check that the button is working as we would want it to do. Just a message, and I'll just produce text in this case. Add button clicked. And that's just a method. So I've got to save all because I've changed the home.html and I've changed the home.ts. So save all and hope we have no gross errors. So there are no gross errors. And if we look down, I'll just clear the console here, look down there, add button clicked. So our button is working and returning this text here, which I put on the log method here. And it will just keep doing that as many times as you have clicked it. You'll see I clicked it 4 times. So in the next video, what we will do is we will implement a service which will save the data that we create into the file that we're using. Now, as you know, none of this data is saved, and whenever we do that, it will just disappear every time we restart the application. No new data is going to be saved because we don't have that persistence yet. But it's a good demonstration of what can be done and be very useful for you in assignments later on.